More on this now. We're joined by Mike Morell, the former deputy director of the CIA, now a CBS News senior security contributor, and John Miller, who used to be at CBS News and is now the deputy commissioner for intelligence and counterterrorism for the New York Police Department. Gentlemen, thank you. Mike, to you first. Al-Qaeda in Yemen is now claiming responsibility for the first of these attacks. What do you make of that?
I can't remember a time, Bob, when Al-Qaeda in Yemen took responsibility for an attack and that turned out to be wrong. So I take the claim of responsibility, the claim that they directed this attack, very seriously. We don't know what direction means. It could simply be having told these two individuals who went to Yemen and trained to go back and attack this particular media outlet. It could have been more than that. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think Al-Qaeda was in part responsible for this. I do think that says something very, very important about all this. We've been focused on ISIS for the last 9 months to 12 months. This is a reminder that Al-Qaeda is still very dangerous and is still a very significant threat to the West, Western Europe, and the United States.
John Miller, the Attorney General touched on this, but what is it that is attracting people from these countries like France, some from the United States, other parts of Europe, to go to these Middle Eastern countries to get this training and then to come back with this sort of thing on their mind? What is this that's going on here?
You know, Bob, I think it's a couple of things. One, it's over the more than a decade since 9/11, the basic maturing of the ideology, but it's the delivery system that's made the real difference. They are putting out products on video, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, but particularly their videos. They're constructing messaging that rivals the ability of Madison Avenue in terms of packaging, in terms of being compelling, in terms of touching emotions, and frankly, in terms of constructing the story with a cleverly arranged set of facts that leaves out anything inconvenient. But the core message is, come fight here with us. The second part of the message, which is a threat to places like Paris and London and New York, is if you can't fight here in Syria, get what weapons you can get your hands on. Don't reinvent the wheel and fight there.
Well, what about the possibility that this attack in France makes it more likely that we may see some sort of an attack like this in the United States? What are you doing at the NYPD now?
Well, we're on a heightened security posture on a normal day compared to almost any other police department. With the amount of resources that we field in counterterrorism missions every day, that's more than 1,000 police officers and civilian analysts who are pointed at the counterterrorism mission every day. But when we see an event like France, we look at that threat stream, we look at what they did, we look at how they did it, we look at the target selection, and that becomes part of the overlay. So that's part of day-to-day business, but I don't think that we are under any more threat, and I have to underline, as Mike would tell you, or any less threat than we were the day before. There is a piece of this, as when you see a school shooting or a workplace violence thing, it doesn't start somebody who wasn't thinking about doing something like this down the road of doing it, but what it does is, and I think we saw a piece of this in Paris, it takes that person who's already thinking about it, already planning it, and may accelerate them.
One of the things that's sort of worrisome here, Mike, is that reports that the Algerians got some advance warning of this and passed it on to the French authorities.
Bob, there's going to be a full investigation here into the performance of the French police and French intelligence. I think one of the things that's really important to highlight are the resources that were available to French intelligence and the French police. Those resources were cut over the last several years. They had to make very difficult choices about who to focus on, who to surveil, and who they had to not surveil because they didn't have the resources. Governments are going to have to fund their law enforcement and their intelligence services to meet this threat, and that includes the United States.
John, I understand you got some disturbing new information last night on this front. Tell us about that.
Well, ISIL issued another threat yesterday. It's a video that was posted on Twitter, and it calls on its followers to attack targets in the West. It specifically mentions the United States, Canada, Great Britain, France, And it is a renewal of a call that they put out in mid-September before a series of attacks in Canada and one in New York City against police officers that occurred in October. So we're seeing that they are using the momentum from the Paris attacks in part of their messaging strategy to see who can we get to follow this. It also specifically mentions as targets civilians, police officers, intelligence officials, and military. So it is something of concern. We put out a citywide notice to police officers last night advising them of the message and reminding them to take extra care and be extra vigilant.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. This is disturbing news today, but we thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you.